Okay, we are starting. He calls it the nigun of the birds. Said he was walking to the old city, to the kotel, and he heard the birds singing this nigun. And really, I like some of his nigunim, but that's my favorite. And this week on the podcast, there's a story about a guy who comes to the Baal Shem Tov and wants to learn how to understand what the birds are saying. So I figure that's also appropriate. Because I was editing the podcast before I came. The guy is very insistent. You'll have to listen to the podcast. What can I say? I'm not telling that story. I have a different story tonight, not that story. Okay, so I'm really excited because we're finally getting out of the woods with this lesson. And it's been a long, intense lesson. But it's actually, I don't know who's old enough, who's watching this, or too old, or too young, whatever it is, to know the Karate Kid, the old version of the Karate Kid. And of course, when I was a teenager, the Karate Kid was like the big thing, wax on, wax off, everybody was wax on, wax off. And what it was, for anybody who doesn't know the reference, is that this kid wanted to learn karate, and the teacher said to him, you're going to wax all these cars, and you're going to put the wax on with your right hand, and you're going to clean it with your left hand. And he toils all day long. And then he says, okay, now you're going to sand the deck, right hand, left hand, exactly like this, and he corrects him. And then at some point the guy gets upset. He says, you're just making me, serve you. And he says, come, I'll show you that you already know how to do karate. And he throws a punch and he says, wax on. And the guy goes like this and blocks the punch. And he says, wax off. And he blocks the punch. He didn't realize that he was actually learning something. We've been going into the Sfirot very deep. I don't think I'm going to need this chart for the rest of the lesson. I'm talking about the Sfirot and going from the bottom to the top and to the different worlds and the energy going up. And of course, the energy is always going up from a mitzvah that we're doing b'simcha. It's connected to Malchut, which is Emunah, which is going up to the feet and to the hands and to the intellect. And we spent many weeks, like 3 weeks maybe, 4 weeks maybe, learning about this very intensely. And now we're pulling out. And now we're going to see the wax on, wax off of what we've been doing. I hope. At least for me, it was. Okay, so I'm just going back one paragraph from where we were last week. Le'en, up above. אות ב' באר רבינו שישנו אור נפלא ונעלם הנקרא אין סוף. He said there's this wondrous and hidden light that's called the infinite light. שאפשר להשיג אותו בחינת מטה ולמטה. We can grasp this infinite light with grasping and not grasping, reaching and not reaching. וכן באר, and so he also explained in part 2, in section 2, שכדי להגיע לזה צריך לקיים את המצוות בשמחה. How do we draw down the infinite light? Oh, I forgot to welcome everyone. Welcome to Aryeh, and to Zahava, and to Yael, and to my mother who watches every week, and to Katie, and Avital, and Carlos. I haven't seen him in a while. And Shana Batsheva. These are people that watch later and like leave me a smiley face or whatever. So yishkoch to everyone. Okay, so how do we bring down this infinite light into the world? We bring it down through doing a mitzvah with joy. By doing a mitzvah with joy, we elevate and fix all of the worlds above us. Until we reach the highest level of the sfirot in the highest of the worlds. And then we achieve bringing together all of the three energies in completeness. Shehem birkat hasechen. What is the highest level? It's when you have an intellectual grasping of the infinite light coming down from above. Emunah v'koach hamiyashev mesader. These are the three energies: the power of the intellect, faith, and the power of a settled and organized mind, which he's going to explain. Now he's going to explain how we achieve through these aspects how we grasp the infinite light of Hashem, that we grasp it, but we don't grasp it. And what a person does and fixes through their service of Hashem, meaning through doing mitzvot, specifically through joy, and they reach the level of meyashev u'mesader, an orderly and a settled mind. Now I'll just explain to you, what is this orderly and settled mind? Remember, how do we grasp the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light? We did it through our mind racing to reach this high spiritual level. But what happens if the mind doesn't stop trying to reach this high spiritual level? Then you lose your mind, which is what we're going to get to later on in the lesson, maybe next week, Ben Zoma. We know the story of the Pardes. The Pardes was a meditation that Rabbi Akiva led 3 of his top students in. Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya, Acher, he's called Acher, Ben Zoma, and remember what the third one was? Rabbi Tarfon? Okay, so what happened? Rabbi Akiva, they went into this high meditation. They reached this place where, Shalom to Natan. They reached this place where they could grasp something of understanding the world as it is in the world to come. And Rabbi Akiva said, when we get to this watering stone in the middle of this deep meditation, remember that water is water. He said, Mayim, Mayim. You're going to say there, Mayim, Mayim. The meaning of this is that what you see in the world to come and what you see in this world are actually the same thing. And if you have a mind that's me'ashev u'misader, that's settled and orderly, then you have the kelim, you have the vessels to handle being in such a high spiritual place. But if not, then what happened to the other 3 rabbis? Only Rabbi Akiva went into this meditation b'shalom and came out b'shalom. But the other rabbis, Rabbi Tarfon became he died. Was it Rabbi Tarfon? I don't know. Whoever it was, he died. Rabbi Ben Zoma, he went crazy. And Acher became a heretic, and that's why he's called the other one. All of them because they didn't have this miyashev u'misader. So he says, okay, here we are, we're now going to make this effort to bring down the infinite light into this finite world by doing a mitzvah with joy. And we're going to allow our mind to chase this light to the highest places, but we have to pull it back with a settled mind, because otherwise we'll lose our mind. Shehu keter. So he says that's keter. So we started from the bottom, which is the Emunah, which is Malchut. We went all the way up, and we reached keter. We reach this level of having some intellectual grasp of Hashem. He says, but when it gets there, you have to kind of pull yourself back, pull yourself down. Kara'ui al yedei mityashev umamtin b'da'ato. And how does a person do this? They pull back and they wait in their mind. Hamochim rodfim la'asigo ein sof. The intellect wants to chase and grasp the infinite light. So can you imagine? I don't know if you remember, my grandmother used to take me to dog races when I was a kid. I don't know if you had that, where you grew up in Philadelphia. But in Hialeah, they had dog races somewhere in Miami, I don't know. My grandmother, this is my mother's mother, she loved to gamble. This is just one of the places to gamble. She went to bingo. She would play with these markers and have like a whole table full of bingo, bingo, bingo. And we went to dog races. So how does it start? The dogs are behind the gate, and there's a carrot, or there's a hound, or whatever. There's a rabbit on a stick, not a real rabbit, a doll on a stick, and they go ping, and they open the gates, and the rabbit starts running on a track around the track, like it's attached to the rail, and they chase it like crazy, and it just goes faster than them. So they're running like crazy, these greyhounds, trying to grab it. They never grab it. I think one time there must be a video on YouTube of when a dog grabbed it, and then the dog was like, went insane because they're never supposed to grab them. So that's what it is here, that you were trying to grasp this Ein Sof, and we're going higher and higher and higher, but we're never supposed to actually grasp it. We should never reach that place, and you can't anyhow. So the mind is chasing after this. Shuhu lamala mekol ha'olamot. This Ein Sof is above all of the worlds. Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. All of these four worlds, which are the four worlds that in some way we have some connection to them in this lowest world where Hashem is hidden. Ve'aketer ma'akev et hasechen kedei leyashev et hasechen. This aspect of keter, which is all the way here at the top, it blocks, it kind of like says stop to your intellect, says hold on, hold back, in order to settle your mind. V'al yedei ha'redifam ve'ama'akev, and through the chasing and pulling back, azai makeh hamochim ve'ameyashev v'mesader, then the brain in a sense is hit by this power of keter, which is saying, hold on, you're going too far, you're going too fast. V'na'asin hechalin le'oin sof. And this pulling back creates palaces, creates vessels for holding on to the infinite light in this finite world. Perush, what is the meaning? Na'asim bebchinat kelim vehechalot beruchniyut ha'elyona. You make vessels and palaces or storage rooms on the high spiritual level. Ve'ena kavana berosh ha'adam atzmo. The intention is not that you're actually going to have a space in your brain yourself. Ela kol beruchniyut ha'elyona. Rather, everything is on a high spiritual level. Meaning that you're kind of, in a sense, let's think of an example. You take a piece of leather and you keep pressing into it and pressing into it and pressing into it. Eventually you're going to stretch the leather. And it's never going to go back to what it was before. Or, rubber or whatever it is, anything that you're pulling, and eventually that's not going to go back to how it was before. So you're pushing and being pulled back. But that pushing and being pulled back, in trying to grasp the infinite light, in doing the mitzvot with joy, that creates a change in yourself. But if there was nothing to stop you, you would just go and you would never stop. And these are the vessels that are created through this hitting, he calls it. It's kind of like hitting a wall. And through these vessels, it's possible for a person to grasp Ha'Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem. And nonetheless, Ha'Ein Sof eino yadua ve'eino mitgaleh. Even though you're going to get some type of the infinite light, if you want, you can close the door. Some type of the infinite light of Hashem, you're going to get a little bit of it. It's still not something that you're going to know. Or is it going to be truly revealed to you? Because this is just the aspect of grasping, but not really grasping. כי אין אפשר לייצר בשכל את תכלית ההיכלות האלה. Because you can't really create a true vessel for this infinite light in your mind. כי הם למעלה מנפשין רוחין ונשמתין. Because they're above the soul energy, the life energy, and the soul itself. As it's explained in the Zohar and all the Aramaic from the Zohar, I'm just going to read here in Hebrew. Mitoch hamasach hazeh, and this is quoting from Parashat Noach, from this blockage, this barrier, al yedei redifat hamachshava, through the chasing of the intellect, magia velo magia. So your mind is going to grasp something, but it's going to be pulled back. So it's not going to grasp something. This is the keter we were talking about that settles and calms the mind. What is this? Shehu parus ben haneatzalim, that this is spread out amongst ha-beruim, through the creations, leven ha-ma'atzel, between those that are created and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem. So this is a light that's coming from Hashem down to us. V'na'asim tish'a hechalot, and 9 palaces are created. Ve'she'einam lo b'chinat orot, they're not the aspect of light. Shezo b'chinat nafshot, which is connected to the soul. V'lo b'chinat ruchot, and not connected to spirit. V'lo b'chinat nishamot, and not connected to the life energy. I'm not sure if I'm translating these in the right order here, but that's what it means. We have something in our body that is beyond the physical that's giving us life, right? Because when a person dies, the body is complete. You know, if a person dies of like something that they naturally die, not some violent act or something, then the body is complete, but it doesn't have the life force in it. So we know that we have something within ourselves that is beyond this world that's causing the body to stay alive. And those are these 3 things that he's talking about there. Ve'ein mi she masigotam, but there's nobody that can grasp this infinite light. Ve'ein mi shemit baket mit dabek behem. There's nobody that can become truly attached to it. Ve'ein mi sheyodea, and there's nobody that truly understands them. V'dash hazeh tachlita yediah, and you should know that this is the ultimate level of knowledge. Ki tachlita yediah delo yeda. What is the highest level? Of not knowing. And of course, delo yeda is from Purim ad delo yeda. That's the highest level, when you reach a place where you don't see the bad traits in anyone, you just get to the place where you see souls of people. Klomar, that is to say, shezo hatachlit liot b'bchinat zo shel mate v'la mate yodea ve'no yodea. This is what we're trying to do. We're never going to fully understand and grasp Hashem, but we want to try to grasp Hashem. And in the effort in trying to grasp Hashem, we're going to get something from it. Klomar, that is to say, sheyodea ma she'eino yodea. A person knows what they don't know. V'yodea ma she'eino yachol la'asig, and a person knows what they're not able to grasp. Ki mitnotzetz lo or ha'in sof, because there's a spark of this infinite light. Kedei sheyeda ma she'tzarich leida, so that a person will know what they need to know, meaning that they'll know that there's this infinite light, but you can't really know this light. B'shivchei Aran, in one of the books that Reb Nassan compiled, Hosif, he added, V'yafan pichen, and nonetheless, mipam lefam ole v'yodea yoter. A person knows sometimes more. V'nitgale lo eino yodea yoter. And the more not knowing is revealed. So you understand? We reach a certain level of, I don't understand Hashem. In the future, if you continue trying, you'll reach an even higher level of not knowing Hashem. Now you would say, well, isn't not knowing just not knowing? No. There's the not knowing at the level that you're at right now, and there's the not knowing at the level that you'll reach after you tried to reach Hashem and realize that you didn't reach Hashem. And this goes on infinitely. Regarding this knowing but not knowing, Siper gam ken ksat imanu eze pa'amim. We told this a few times. Ech bechol yedi'ah yesh hatachlit. With every level of understanding, there is this level of knowing that you don't know. And even though you reach this level of not knowing, nonetheless, this is still not the final level of not knowing. This is not the highest level of not understanding, but just the highest level of not understanding where a person is right now. And the person has to make an effort to merit to reach a higher level of not understanding. To reach a level of not knowing on a higher level. And so forever. So that a person can never reach this place of fully knowing. They'll always be in a place of not knowing. And even though they've reached this high level of not knowing, they still haven't reached the place of truly not knowing. And this is a quote from Yeshayahu, V'hispia b'tzachtzachot nafshecha, that he was satisfied with the polishing of his soul. Ki orot eila, this light from Hashem. Hema tzachtzachot, this is what's polishing your soul in a sense. Shehem lamala me'asfirot, that this is coming from above all of the energies that are expressed in this world. Ashrei mi shezoche sheyirdof machshavato la'asig hasagot ele. Blessed is the person that merits that their mind should chase after and try to grasp this infinite light of Hashem. Even though it's not possible for us in a physical body to grasp this infinite light, ki la midbakin v'la yedi'an, because a person cannot grasp onto it and cannot know it. I'efshar litbaget lihidabek behem v'ladat otam. You can't attach yourself and you can't know them. Umikol makom hirshimo shenishar betet heichalin elo me'aweret ha'adam me'od la'avodat Hashem. The impression that's left behind in the 9 vessels that you create within yourself in trying to grasp this light and not grasping it, these inspire a person very much in their service of Hashem. So you understand how that happens. So you do something, you have a spiritual experience in doing it, and then you try again to have a higher level of that, and a higher level of that. It's going to leave an impression on you that's going to elevate you to a higher spiritual level. And where you were 5 years or 10 years or 20 years ago will be so far from where you are right now, even though you haven't actually achieved anything. All you've achieved is getting better at getting closer to Hashem, even though you can't say that you actually held on to Hashem. It's this intermediary space, which is really kind of our life. It says in Pirkei Avot, the person is born against their will, a person lives against their will, a person dies against their will, and a person will give an accounting of what they did in this world against their will. So we basically are born in the middle and we die in the middle. We never really have a beginning, we never really have an end. And that's because the soul is eternal. The soul was born before it came to this world, and the soul exists after it leaves this world. So we're constantly in the state of magia velo magia, of grasping and not grasping. When you're aware of it, it makes it totally different. That when you have an experience, you do a mitzvah with joy, and that elevates you, and you feel that elevation, even though you can't hold on to it, it leaves an impression that changes you. V'tish'a heichalim eile she'o ein sof mitgale behem, these 9 vessels in which the infinite light reveals itself within them, b'bchinat mata v'lemate, this is reaching and not reaching, na'asim al yedei ha'betisha, it's done through the hitting, she'mevatshin, she'makin, hamochin, beketer, b'shat redifa, that we hit the intellect when we hit it with the level of keter, when it's chasing after this infinite light. Shel HaMachshava La'asig B'Or Ein Sof, of the mind trying to grasp the infinite light. Va'mochin Hein Tlat, the mind is 3 levels. Shlosha, Chochma Bin Vadat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And we talked about Chochma Bin Vadat, of Chochma, which are facts, Bina, understanding one thing from another, and Da'at is awareness of Hashem in this world where Hashem is most hidden. V'kol echad kalul mitzlat, and each of those 3 have 3 levels in themselves. Ki nichlelin ze bazeh, because they're intertwined with one another. B'shat v'difa, and the time when a person is chasing intellectually the infinite light. V'shalosh pa'amim shalosh, and 3 times 3 hem tisha is 9. V'zeu tisha echalin, and this is the 9 vessels that we were talking about before. So now this is officially the end of the lesson. Now there's an addition from Reb Nassim which clarifies the lesson further, and that's what we're going to be learning probably this week and next week. And this is the last page here, right? No, so maybe another 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 2.5, we'll see. Okay. Meitachat omek inyan ze, mechemat omek inyan ze, because of the deepness of the subject that we just learned, the ketzad efshar levar'o le'uvda o le'maaseh, and so that we can clarify it for using it in a practical way. Hosif kan Reb Nassim added here bi'or ledvarim, an additional explanation of Rabbi Nachman's lesson. Meve'er Reb Nassim ze lashono. Reb Nassim adds, and this is what he said: Ze inyan amok mi sheyimtze'enu. This is a very deep matter, whoever comes across it. Kamuvan lemaskil, and for sure, somebody who is on an intellectual level where they can grasp it. Ukasher ramazli Rabbeinu zichronam v'cha, and as Rabbi Nachman of blessed memory hinted to me ba'atzmo himself, Godel amkut hasod hanora hazeh, the great depth of this great secret in what we just learned. Shemagia lamala v'chule, that goes higher and higher and so on. Kemevo'er b'torot Torah hazot le'manyen ki medaber al herat ein sof. That's clarified in this Torah for a person who studies it deeply, that we're talking about the revelation of the infinite light, of a ray of the infinite light. Acharei shezocher letaken al yado keter da'atzilut, and through this a person merits to fix the highest level of the Sfirot Keter, which is at the top of the chart here, from the highest of the worlds, which is Atzilut, B'madrigat Nosefet Lamala V'kanal. And then it goes you to an even higher and higher level, as mentioned above. V'echreach leverer devar k'tzat. So we have to explain this a little bit. V'hu, and this is what he said, Ki ha'keter hu ha'me'ashev ha'mesader et ha'mochim. Keter is what settles and organizes a person's mind. Dahainu ha'koach sheyesh ba'asechel shel ha'adam liyashev u'lesader et ha'moch v'adat. Just like a person has the ability to calm themselves down. You say, calm down. Calm my thinking down. Let me think about the situation. Let me understand what's going on here. So too, when you're reaching a very high spiritual level, you have to be able to pull yourself down. I remember Friday nights when I was leading the davening at Mayanot, and the davening was very high, and Reb Shalom would say to me, "Are you here or are you up there in the what's it called, the kippah, the dome in Mayanot?" So sometimes I would say, "I'm up there." He's like, "No, you have to be down here." And I'd say, "I'm down here." He said, "No, you have to be up there. You have to be down here and up there at the same time." That's the miyashev u'mesader. That's being able to experience the spiritual level, but still be grounded. Because if you experience it without being grounded, you won't come back. Now, he's going to talk about that. I don't know if we'll get to it tonight. But I actually know people that this happened to. Like, really know people. People that I personally knew or know that reach spiritual places. One guy ended up dying from this. Another person has serious health problems. And another one, it seems like he lost his mind. And I'm not making this stuff up. The guy that died, I don't know if I should mention his name. I'll just tell you, it's the craziest story. Then we'll finish this paragraph and then I'll tell you another story. This guy shows up at Ma'ayanot, an American guy shows up at Ma'ayanot, a Chabad guy. Okay, lots of people come to Ma'ayanot, lots of people come and go. He's there for like 6 months, and then he gets sick. He's in the hospital, and out of the hospital, in the hospital, out of the hospital. And at one point, I always end up visiting people in the hospital if they're there for like more than a few days. I know it's important. Bikur Cholim. I take my guitar. I go. I play some music for them. I took the guitar. I was playing some music for him, and he said to me, the music is really healing, and thank you very much, and you're a very special person, and thank you. And we learned a little bit of Likutey Moharan, and then he says to me, do you know my story? I said, no, know nothing about you. He said, I used to be very rich. I had $200 million, and I lost everything. And I decided to come here with his wife and his daughter. And he didn't tell me the whole story. The whole story I figured out. I was told later. He decided when he was still wealthy to support somebody who was going very deep into Kabbalah and teaching Kabbalah. And this guy, I don't know what he did, and I don't know what other people have done, because I know other people that were experienced, that were really touched by this stuff in a negative way. He went too deep into Kabbalah. I don't even know what that means. Can't explain it to you. I do know from what we're learning here that you can lose your mind from doing this stuff. And he didn't end up losing his mind, but he ended up getting sick, and no amount of money could heal him. No amount of anything could heal him. Spent 1.5 years in the hospital, and then he died. Crazy. Now, it was only after he died, and I went to the Shiva, that his widow told me the whole story, that he had all this money, and that this crazy thing happened, and the government took all of his money, and that they were left with nothing, and she thinks it's all because of this Kabbalah. Another guy has serious health problems, very deep into Kabbalah, and another guy is actually one of our Shabbos guests. Something happened to him, like really happened to him, like he lost his mind. So this is, I'm amazed, like I'm not a person that tells stories like this. This is not my realm. I'm not into conspiracy theories or any strange stuff. I'm a very grounded person, but these are people that I personally know. And you have to have the me'ashev u'mesader. You have to have that level of keter. A keter is a crown. It's going around your head. You have to, when you reach this high spiritual place, you have to always ground yourself. You always have to pull yourself down. And it's this mate vela mate. Reaching, but not reaching. Because if you just try to reach and reach and reach and reach, you'll be that dog that's running around the track, and you'll never reach, and you'll just probably die of exhaustion. So this is serious stuff. Even though apparently I've learned Kabbalah, but I don't even know it. The Rav Cheshin tells me that I know more Kabbalah than I think, and obviously I don't, because I have no idea what he's talking about. But we were learning Zohar the last week, and it's like, you know this stuff, you know this stuff. Okay, לשלוט ולעצור במחשבותיו, לבל יהרוס לצאת מחוץ מהגבול. So here is exactly what we're talking about. A person should hold themselves back from their thoughts so that they don't cause damage by crossing the boundaries. ממקום שאין בכוח השגתו להשיג. To a place where a person does not have the ability to grasp what they're learning. ולהשתמש שם רק בכוח אמונה. When you reach that place, instead of trying to intellectually understand it, you just say, I'm only going to have emunah. I'm only going to have faith in Hashem. So apparently, there are methods, practical methods. I don't know where you learned this stuff, but there are permutations of Hashem's name that you can meditate on them, and you can spend hours going deeper and deeper and deeper. And when you come out of these meditations, if you did not have the kelim, you didn't have the vessels to handle them, you don't come out of them. And that's what happened to these people. It's just mind-blowing to me, because I know them. I mean, I know them like I know you. It's like not a distant person. It's somebody I really know. Crazy. I don't have it within me to go to those places. It's just not my nature. I'm a very tachlis person, bottom line person. So I'm not interested in going into these high spiritual places. If I end up there, I end up there, but I'm not chasing after them. But if you do, you have to be careful with holding yourself back. Ze koach u b'chinat keter. What is this holding you back? It's the level of keter, as mentioned above. Ze koach hu kemo mechitza hamafseket ben hamochim leven ha'or ein sof. This holding yourself back is like a divider that's stopping your mind, that's dividing between your mind and the infinite light. Ki ze koach hu me'ashed mesader. This energy, this power, is the settling of the mind and the holding yourself back. Hu ma'akevet hamochin be'et merutzatam v'ridafam bli yahalsu la'alot el Hashem lemala mechitzatam. This holding yourself back intellectually in the time when you're trying to chase after and grasp the infinite light, so that it will not cause damage as you go up higher and higher. You won't cross over this divider that you've created to stop yourself from reaching there. Because the mind chases and tries to grasp the infinite light, and this is the energy mentioned above, so the mind is going to constantly trying to go higher and higher and higher. It will never be satisfied. It will never reach a place where it'll feel like it reached enough of the infinite light, because there is no end to the infinite light. But you are a finite being and you can't go that far, not unless you have the vessels for it. So somebody, I'm sure the Lubavitcher Rebbe was able to go to a very high place spiritually, but to pull himself back down, he had the miyashev, he had the keter, he had the level of keter. But somebody who's not on that level and hasn't done that work, they try to reach there, they will lose their mind. This keter, this holding yourself back, stands there like a divider. I'm getting tired. Kanal, and holds them back from the chasing this infinite light, as mentioned above. Okay, so we'll continue that this next week. So what we did, you remember, we were spending all of this time talking about all the sfirot and how doing a mitzvah down below is going into the legs and going to the hands and going to the mind, and this is elevating the world, and this is doing this and this is doing this. This is what we were doing. We were intellectually understanding Hashem's light. We were bringing it down to a level that we don't grasp it. It's something that I can say the words, I understand what I'm saying, but I don't understand what I'm saying. I understand what I'm explaining, but I don't really understand what I understand it, like the words, and I understand the ideas, but I don't understand it on a level that I really understand what this light is. But the fact that I have an understanding of it, and I know that when I do a mitzvah with joy, it's creating this chain reaction of spiritual energy that's going up and coming back down, and it's affecting all the worlds. And it's also bringing back a little impression, a spark of the infinite light into this world. And I know intellectually that it's happening, and I can feel something when I have a spiritual experience, and I know that that's the infinite light coming down. As long as I'm not just chasing the infinite light, but I'm bringing it down into some type of vessel, it's going to elevate me in my service of Hashem. But if not, it's just going to be light that doesn't have a place to hold it. And that's a dangerous thing. And there are people that want to go there, and they don't realize that how dangerous it is. Kind of like the story on the podcast this week. It's a real plug for the podcast. Okay, so I'll tell you a story that I told on Friday night at Mayanot. This is a story I told on the podcast way back in the beginning, probably story 10 or something like that, about the Anshi HaKadosh, Rabbi Moshe, hello everyone, Moshe ben Chaim. And I get going up to the studio, very sweet. And when he was 14 years old, he got married. Now, I was having a whole conversation with my little kids still at home. I do a lot of homeschooling just unintentionally. So, how does this work? How does this work? What is nuclear energy? What is solar energy? And I like explaining these things. So they wanted to know what was life like 200 years ago. And I said, people lived to 40 or 50 years old. That was it. So you had to get married at 14 because there were always people who lived to 103. You'll see graves like in Egypt of somebody who lived to 103. So rare though. I mean, that was so incredibly rare. People who live to 50, that's why there's a midlife crisis at 40. Because the body, I guess, knows that it's going to die, but it continues living. Of course, it loses all the teeth and all of that. So he got married at 14. And unfortunately, when he was 17 and his wife was 17, his wife passed away. And his mother was very distraught because here's her son, he's a tzaddik. He sits and learns 3 o'clock in the morning, learns all day, he's on a high spiritual level. And poor thing, he was married and now he's widowed. And his wife used to bring to him a cup of tea every morning. So the mother decides, I'm going to bring a cup of tea to my son and be nice to him. So she wakes up at 3 in the morning to bring him the tea for whatever, 3:30 or 4. And she does this for a few months and it's too hard on her. So she says, okay, I got to hire somebody to do this. She goes next door, there's a water carrier, and he has a daughter, Bracha Fegi. And she says to Bracha Fegi, you want a job? She says, sure. All you have to do is get up at 3 in the morning and bring a cup of tea to my son. But he's very holy. Don't disturb him. Only bring him the tea and put it on the table and then go back to sleep. She says, no problem. The next morning, she brings the tea to the Anshich HaKadosh. And then a few hours later, he runs to his mother's house. And he says, who brought me the tea this morning? She says, what are you talking about? I brought you the tea. He said, you didn't bring me the tea. Who brought me the tea this morning? She said, oh, I'm too tired. I asked Bracha Fegi. He said, goodbye. He runs over to her house. He says, you brought me the tea this morning? She said, yes. He said, will you marry me? So she said, sure. So at the wedding, after the chuppah, the Al-Shich HaKadosh says, I want to tell everyone how I knew this was my beshert. He says, Bracha Fegi, when you brought me, why did you bring me the tea? She said, well, I brought you a cup of tea because your mother asked me, and I brought you a second cup of tea for your chavruta. And she said, I figure it's only right, you're learning with somebody, you should have a second cup of tea. He said, my wife for 3 years brought me tea and she only brought me 1 cup of tea. My mother for 3 months brought me tea and she only brought me 1 cup of tea. You brought me tea and you saw Eliyahu Navi learning with me. You're obviously my beshert. And he said, that's why he married her. I love that story. That's it, Ari. That's all you need is somebody to bring you a cup of tea in the morning and then you'll find your beshert. Bezrat Hashem. Okay, shkoch everyone for sticking around. Hi lai, an lai lai, hi lai, hi. Lai lai lai, lai lai, lai lai, hi. Lai lai lai. Oh, hi lai lai. La 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 everyone.